Now, it's always a risk to start off with a joke, but here we go. One day, the UN Secretary-General proposed that in the interest of global peace and harmony, the world's soccer players should all come together and form one United Nations global soccer team. Everyone loved the idea until someone asked the obvious question. A global soccer team, that's fantastic, but who are we going to play against? Well, the UN Secretary-General said, that's easy, we'll play against Israel, of course. It's an old joke that contains a grain of truth, although it's starting to look more like the whole loaf, isn't it? Our government, motivated as always by political advantage rather than by principle, has played a dangerous game with anti-Semitism these past 14 months. They've reacted to every instance of Jew hatred with one eye on how their response will play in the marginal seats of Western Sydney, where they're anxious not to lose Muslim votes. But in trying to walk both sides of the fence, for more than a year they've refused to condemn anti-Semitism without also condemning Islamophobia, even when there's no instance of Islamophobia to point to. All they've done is fan the flames of anti-Semitism. And now we've got spot fires, as in literal fires, pretty much everywhere. With the country still reeling from the firebombing of a Melbourne synagogue in the early hours of Friday, we woke to yet another anti-Semitic attack this morning. Around 1 a.m, 2 masked men drove a stolen car to Sydney's eastern suburbs, where they set it on fire and painted anti-Israel slogans across the walls of homes. I should point out how dumb these idiots are. They can't even spell Israel. What hope they understand the geopolitical situation in the Middle East. New South Wales Premier Chris Minns, I have to say, is proving himself to be a very unusual Labor leader. He cancelled all other appointments this morning and went straight to the scene of the attack. Now, of course, if he'd been the Prime Minister, he would have played a round of tennis and shown up next week.
What is obviously a shocking morning in Sydney's east as we respond to what we regard as a hate crime on the streets of Sydney, a violent act of destruction, clearly anti-Semitic, designed to strike fear into the community that lives in this part of Sydney. I want to make it clear that this is antithetical and completely opposite to the kind of community and society that we want in Australia in 2024. This violent act will be met with the full response from New South Wales Police.
A full response from New South Wales Police. I like Chris Minns, but I'll believe it when I see it. What chance police will deal with today's episode of anti-Semitism when they haven't yet dealt with Monday's? I want to remind you, because things move so fast at the moment, that less than 48 hours after the terror attack on the Ripponlea synagogue, dozens of men flooded onto the streets of Canterbury Bankstown, citing Muhammad's slaughter of Jews in the 7th century and chanting, "O Jews, the army of Muhammad will return." And police are still investigating. I'm still waiting for police to do something about that sheikh who gloated on the streets of Sydney that the Hamas slaughter of 1,200 Israelis was a day of victory. Remember that guy? How is celebrating the murder of civilians by terrorists not showing support for a terrorist organisation? How is that not incitement to even more violence? There's more chance of getting your $275 power bill reduction than seeing anyone charged or deported for incitement right now. I know it, you know it, but here's the most telling thing. Pro-Palestinian supporters, they know it as well. And if you want proof of how little respect there is for the law right now, well, there was a small but very telling incident this morning. While New South Wales Police Commissioner Karen Webb was in the middle of talking about the latest attack on Jews, a passerby interrupted with a shout of "Free Palestine."
Very high visible police presence. We're actually taking...
I can't believe that. You've got the Commissioner of Police, you've got the New South Wales Premier standing right behind her, and a passerby feels at liberty, while they're talking about an attack on Jews, a passerby feels the liberty to yell out, "Free Palestine." That's a pretty big middle finger to the Police Commissioner and the Premier. Pro-Palestinian protesters don't respect the police, clearly, but it's because the police don't do anything. And when police do something, well, it's more likely that they're doing something to Jews. Just last week, pro-Palestinian protesters rallied against Sydney's Great Synagogue, trapping worshippers inside for almost 3 hours. Police left the protesters in place. But do you know who they moved on? A Jew who dared to wave an Israeli flag.
The problems and hunger that we have around the world is... Shame on you!
Go away. Okay, no, you're going away this way and you're going away. You're just antagonising him. No need to be here.
The police officer tells the Jewish person, "You've got no right to be here," while 100 or so protesters are barricading everybody inside the synagogue. You just can't make this stuff up. Now, pro-Palestinian protesters, they take note of these things and they become even more emboldened. Still, at least Chris Minns is calling things out, even if not much is being done. He was asked whether this morning's graffiti, "Kill Israel," was anti-Semitic